it's always nice to talk to an artist who's from my stomping grounds. So you grew up in
Yeah.
Mesquite, is that right?
Yeah, I went to Petite High School growing up. Go Pirates.
Wow, that's awesome. I lived right off of I-30, right next to Mesquite for quite some time.
Really?
So Mesquite was my family's go-to place to get everything. That's actually where I bought some of my movies. I used to.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there's a Blockbuster that's like right next, that was like strategically placed next to the movie theater, and that's where I used
Yeah,
to get all my movies too,
yeah.
back in the day.
Well, I know you went to Texas A&M, but was there anything about the Dallas-Fort Worth art scene specifically that may have ignited your passion for the arts?
I believe that the art programs that I was a part of in high school, that was more something that was local to our school rather than the art scene at large. I was a fan of going to things like art museums or like the science place or things like that. But a lot of my inspiration kind of drew from, well, the inspiration to choose the career path that I did drew from what I was seeing like at school and seeing like
Mm,
what I could be as an artist at school specifically.
mm. What was it at school that drew you in?
I think that it was just the difference in like classroom style, if I'm being honest. You
Mhm.
know, I was and still am a pretty studious kid. And to see what could happen if your class was just making stuff, because that's what all the classes were. I really liked the idea of having something tangible to show for your work, or having something that you could present and kind of show off to other people, instead of just grades. So I really liked art classes a lot more because you had more of a visual, more positive visual feedback, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. So you've been with Pixar for almost 2 years, about a year and a half.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I started September 21st of 2020. So yeah, about a year and a half, 2 years. We're getting there.
Congratulations, that's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your relationship? Obviously, we all kind of grew up with Pixar
Mm.
films. I think Toy Story will always have a very special place in my
Oh,
heart.
yeah, yeah.
So, what has your relationship been with that?
I think that for Pixar specifically, it's just been something. I used to kind of write it off. I used to write off kid movies in general back when I was like a mature tween girl. But growing up, it was more like, oh yeah, these are really fun and engaging movies. And like there are even like video games that they came out with. I played
Yeah.
the Toy Story video game on Nintendo 64 a lot. I always thought of it as something like, oh yeah, this is a really great film with a really great story, and I'm probably gonna cry. And that was just kind of my go-to thing. But everything kind of changed whenever I saw Brave,
Hmm.
because I watched it. I was a kid. I was like, oh, well, it's a kid's movie. I don't know if I liked it because I'm mature now. But I saw an article afterwards talking about all of the behind the scenes stuff that was going on with Brave on the technology side, to see the tech team that went behind, Merida's hair, to see
Yeah.
all the details that went into like the grass and like all of the fur sims for the bears. And I was really interested in the fact that something that looked so effortless or looked so flawless on the screen to me was actually something that took a long time and took a lot of people to work together and do. So
Yeah.
I think that that was part of what inspired me at first to go into animation.
Mm. So I'm very much the same way. I'm a meticulous film watcher right now.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
I'll watch something and I tend to watch it a few times. Like the first time I'll watch it, I'll get wrapped up in the story and the emotions and
Mm-hmm.
the themes of it
Mm-hmm.
all. But then the second time, I start breaking down
A lot more
shots
critical
and frames
eye.
by
Yeah.
frames and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
That's definitely something that happens here at the studio too. Like during all of the reviews that we have, like there will be people in the audience who obviously have been working there a lot longer than I have, so they have a better eye. But they'll be like, "Can you pause on frame 326, and you zoom in right there next to the elbow. There's a slight in it. It's like so meticulous. And like I knew that Pixar and Disney had like a reputation of that beforehand, but I didn't know the extent of it until like I actually started working there. But no, there are also people behind the scenes who are nitpickers like us, and like we're trying to get in there and make sure every single detail looks as good as it can, you know, on time and budget.
Yeah, that's always what's so fun about watching some of the extras and the behind the scenes, is being able to see like the A113 and various other things that are going on in the background. Is there a specific detail that you may have contributed to this that people may not catch, but you're super proud of it?
That's a good question. Let me think about that for. Yeah, there's a couple of like tiny details without having any spoilers in the film, but there's one scene where May has some sparklers and she throws them down on the ground. And this was like my first shot that I worked on a long time ago, but she throws them down on the ground, and I had like the sparklers give out like a sad little like spit out at the end, and after the sparkler fell on the ground. And that's like such a quick thing. It only lasts like half a second, but it's like such a small thing. Or like May's looking at some really good food and she's like drooling over it, and it's like like it's like long and like gross, and then it goes away. And like those are like tiny details that I spent, you know, several weeks on, but they only last for like a second, two max, and then it's already on to the next thing. But I'd say I was proud of like the tiny details I'm able to like creatively get in there that adds something to the scene and it might not be noticed. I did a similar thing. I know that we're talking about Turning Red, but I did a similar thing with Luca, where the Nona was like snoring, and so she like inhaled a lot of bubbles like coming in as she was snoring, and then pushed them back out as she was exhaling. Like that was like tiny things like that are things I'm proud of. So.
Oh, cool. So Turning Red was not your first project?
That is correct. Yeah. So Luca was my first project. Gotcha. Turning Red is my second project at Pixar. I've worked on films before then.
Right. So what's the workflow like? Are you bouncing around from project to project to kind of like, I don't know, build like creative strength in a very unique way, or do you see things all the way through?
It's a good question. For our studio, we see things all the way through, at least at my level. You sign on for your cast for a specific film, and then you see that film all the way through to the end. So I started September 2020 on Luca, stayed on Luca until it was done, start on Turning Red, stay on Turning Red till it's done. So yeah, hopping around is very rare. It does happen from time to time, but very rare. Hasn't happened for me.
Gotcha. Did your, in terms of Turning Red, did your life in Montreal have an impact on bringing more authenticity to the film?
That's a good question. I think so, a little bit. I think that Montreal and Toronto are like a little bit different, but I would say that the diversity that I saw in the school was very similar to the diversity that I saw while I was in Montreal. A little bit different because we're not middle schoolers, but definitely seeing people from like all over the world and meeting them, and meeting people from different countries who are speaking different languages. Everybody like looks different. Like I think that there is a lot of diversity that I could pull from. Definitely. Yeah, I would say that the main thing that the director is trying to channel when she's like coming from like talking about a girl who grew up in Toronto, she's really channeling the Chinese Canadian experience. And that's something that was very important to her. And for me personally, the thing that I saw the most of that resonated with my time in Canada was the diversity. So kind of similar.
Gotcha. Before I get a little more into the themes, I'm just curious about your day-to-day working on this film, like the sorts of things that you would get into. The
type of stuff that I usually do is I will wake up I will check on what's come off of the render farm, which is essentially just like you send things off to render. It takes a long time for it to come back, so you usually send it overnight. So I wake up, I check on my renders, and we'll have meetings called walkthroughs where, you know, every single effects artist gets assigned shots. So like for walkthroughs, I have like everybody like shows off their shot and shows off their progress on their shot. So I could say, oh, well, here's a panda poof, because you know when May turns from a human to a panda to human, there's a big pink poof. That's one of the main things that I was doing as an effects artist, is handling those poofs. There's like over 100 poofs in the show. But they say, oh, well, here's this panda poof that I got. What do you think? And that's what I would say to my supervisor, because that's who I directly, it's like me and then the leads and then the supervisor. So I show it off to the supervisor and let's say, here's the poofs. And he'll say, okay, let's change this, prune this, more velocity here, let's drag here, make sure it glides here. And we'll iterate on those notes. And then sometimes if the renders come back fast enough, we can show it again in the afternoon. But other times, if it looks really good, then our supervisor will say, okay, send it to review. And then we go in front of the director, Domi Shi, and then we'll say, here's a poof, what do you think? And she'll say, I like it, change this, modify this, blah, 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 blah. So my day-to-day is meetings where I show myself off and get notes. And then in between that, it's just working on my shots. And with work from home, it offers like a lot more flexibility to kind of do my own thing, like, you know, put a load in the dishwasher, like do some laundry or stuff while I'm waiting on stuff. But yeah, I'd say that maybe like a third of my day is meetings, and the rest of it is just working on my stuff.
Gotcha. So what's that collaboration like with maintaining creative continuity among the other artists, and where you can bring your own visual flair to it, but it still needs to fit within the visual rhythm.
Within the look, yeah. There's definitely, there's certain parts that are very standardized, and then there's certain parts where we get to be a lot more loosey-goosey with it. But still, everything has to go get an okay from the director. But there are certain things that are standardized. So for example, the panda poof, that's that's a very specific color, very specific behavior, very specific gravity, very specific lighting. So all of that, it needs to look the same from like shot to shot. But there are certain things that are more like one-offs. So like, for example, the slow motion poof that was in the trailer, or the tears that are flying off of May's face, or like the sparklers that I was talking about, or the drool. Like those are things that don't really, like, it's not like the director had a vision for the drool. She's just like, make some drool. And then that's where, as an artist, you can kind of go in and you can play with it. You can say, oh, well, I want like maybe an anime style where it's just like a shape that goes on her chin, or, oh, I want to look really exaggerated, kind of gross. So it's like this dangly thing that like hangs off of her head. And as an artist, you can like come with those ideas, and, you know, you can pass them through to your supervisor and through the director. And they really do encourage that, encourage like, you know, adding something new, bringing something in, and saying like, oh, well, what if it was something like this? And if it's something that doesn't already have a specific look in mind, like they'll welcome it. But usually that's creating more work for yourself, but still they welcome it, so.
Oh, that's cool. Before we run out of time, I wanted to get a little more into the emotional themes of this story. You made me think of it when you were describing your experience of watching Brave, but I can't help but think, what would 13-year-old Jasmine think of this movie if she had seen it?
I think it would definitely resonate with her. I think that 13-year-old Jasmine was very dorky. She had and still has like a friend group of all of these like dorky, cool friends, and we were obsessed with boy bands and stuff like that. So I think this is definitely something that would resonate with her. One of May's main struggles in the film is trying to stay true to herself while trying to uphold the expectations that her mother and her family have on her, and trying to stay true to yourself, but also stay true to your family and your heritage. That's something that a lot of teenage girls go through, especially for people of color, but just a lot of teenage girls go through. So I think that's something that would resonate with me. Just the growth and the change and the kind of unexpectedness kind of that the panda is, where it's just you're trying to hide this part of yourself or like remain calm and like suppress and like hold it in.
Right.
But I think that she definitely like relate to that because that was something that she was going through. So I hope that, you know, any teenage girl or just anybody who's going through that awkward stage, like I think that this would definitely be something that resonates with them.
What's cool about it is that this film kind of serves as two different stories in a way that it can mean something for young people, but can also mean something to me as a parent to kind of relate to that mother and daughter relationship. Did it feel like that when you were making it, that you were kind of making two different movies in a way because you're focused on the art from both a youthful eye but also an adult one?
I would say definitely so. I would say that there are definitely two different stories. There's definitely like maybe two different perspectives, I would say. And like you could see kind of like the youthful, like May flair, especially for like certain shots. And you could definitely see that style in there. But I would say that there definitely are like scenes that are coming from the parents' perspective as well. And like showing like, you know, how this is something that's like inherited, like generational, like the same way that the panda gift runs in the family. Like I would say that pressure and that desire to kind of like hold a part of yourself in or present the best version of yourself for your family. I think that's something that the mother is going through as well.
Yeah.
That you kind of see throughout the film. So I definitely say that the story is twofold, and it's not one clear side. So it's definitely nuanced.
Yeah, for sure.
Mama's girls. Stop!